It does not apply to mobile equipment such as tractors or trucks or harvesters. The air toxic control measure requires these diesel engines
They're great when they work.
to be replaced with lower emission, cleaner engines based on their emissions profile. So what would happen is the oldest, dirtiest engines need to be replaced in the 2010, 2011 timeframe, and with the balance of the engines being replaced in the 2014, 2015 timeframe. They also require the engine owners to register and pay a fee to the district. What we've tried to do is implement this air toxic control measure with the least amount of disruption and impact on the agricultural community. We had a workshop with the agricultural community on June 5th of this year, and the representatives there felt we had a reasonable approach. On July 24th, the district's advisory committee unanimously recommended adoption of the proposed rules. We've also been working closely with both the Santa Barbara County and San Luis Obispo County APCDs to develop uniform rules. We're actually going to have uniform application forms, and we're going to set our fees to be uniform, and also there'll be reciprocity. So once you register in one district, if you did move the engine, you would have registration in both the other districts. We're trying to streamline the process, working with the other two districts to keep the cost down. And our proposed fee of $200 per engine per year will come close to recovering our cost to implement this program. Since we tried to keep them uniform, we went with the lowest common denominator, and the hourly rate for an engineer is slightly lower in San Luis Obispo than Santa Barbara and Ventura counties. And I want to point out this $200 per year will recover the cost for us implementing the program for operators that do comply with the air toxic control measure in our proposed Rule 250. And for non-compliant engines, it's going to be have to handle through the enforcement program. And lastly, we're working with the agricultural community to provide assistance via our Carl Moyer program and our AB 923 program. Your board in June approved funding for 33 of these agricultural pump engines. Item 8 today, there'll be 10 more proposed before your board, and we expect to have anywhere from 10 to 13 more coming in the October time frame. So we are getting out there and assisting the agriculture community with early compliance, and these are cost-effective early reductions for our county. And that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Any questions to staff? Mr. Morgan.
Mike, could you please explain to why, when we discuss other counties also being part of this, what the problems were? Because we talked about the other counties bringing their stuff over, portable engines, who didn't have to pay as much and didn't be as responsible as we would in our requirements.
Well, we wanted to have reciprocity. Another thing we really wanted to avoid was the fact that, we might have a $220 fee and Santa Barbara $200 and San Luis $180, and suddenly the finger pointing starts, and why can't you be as efficient as them? And we also wanted to, since some of these farmers actually, there are some large operators that have multi-district farming, or at least operations in 2 counties. And for them, once they understand the Ventura program, they're going to understand the Santa Barbara and the San Luis program. So they're going to deal with one application form. The registrations are going to look very similar. So,
why did we decide not to try to include other counties with farming, especially
for Monterey?
There you go.
Monterey, they're an attainment district, and this air toxic control measure also will achieve nitrogen oxide reductions. As a matter of fact, when you look at the emissions from these engines, it's about a ton per day of nitrogen oxides. When you replace them with lower emission engines, you're going to get about a 70% nitrogen oxide reduction, which is significant, 7 tenths of a ton per day, and it's going to occur during summer months, which is our smog season, so you're going to get significant reduction. Monterey's position was, we don't need NOx reductions, so they wanted to pull that out of their rules somehow. I don't understand how you could possibly do that, because the cleaner engine's the cleaner engine. I mean, they don't build low particulate, high NOx engines. I'm not sure what they were doing, but we thought we couldn't work with them. South Coast District wants to actually permit the engines and apply some of their other rules to them. So that's a much more stringent and costly program at the South Coast District.
I just want to ask that question so they understand why it's just the 3 counties and not other surrounding. Probably have.
Any other questions of staff?
30 seconds, I know we're on time. 30 seconds on why $200 seems like a good price by comparison.
What we did is, well, San Luis, we all sat down and San Luis came up with estimates on what it would take in engineering time and to get out and do one inspection. And basically what they came up with was a plan and rule development. And by year 4, we should recoup our costs. And it's based on San Luis Obispo's hourly rates. Ours are slightly higher, but it's going to be close. So we believe it's reasonable. I just want to point one thing out. If we had gone the permit route, the cost would have been significantly higher to the agricultural community.
What's the current fee on they pay now for their pumps?
Their engines are exempt right now, so there is no fee.
So it's a brand new fee.
It's a brand new fee.
Oh wow! So some of these farms are going to have a few of these.
That's true. That is true. But like I said, it's substantial savings versus permitting. And
But we just sat here in our earlier meeting we had dealing with people paying more for water and more for everything else. It makes it very difficult for these farmers.
You're also, Mike, a lot of them, not a lot, but they're being slowly replaced through the Carl Moyer program and others with newer diesel motors, right?
that's correct. So we'll still pay the registration, but I mean, the assistance and this allowance to provide assistance to agricultural engines is unique under state law. And generally, once a regulation is adopted, that reduction is no longer surplus. So let's say we had a new regulation for an engine used in an oil field. They can't come into the Carl Moyer program. Only the agricultural community. And really, what the Carl Moyer program is, and the lion's share of the cost is replacement of that engine. They're receiving this basically grant funding to pay about 70% of their compliance costs.
As Supervisor Foy indicated, we worked on Board of Supervisors on rates, water rates, for example. And if you take a look at the cumulative impact of all the fees and so forth that farmers in this case have to pay, it gets up there.
So I think that was one of the one of our tax in using registration versus permitting is try to minimize the fee to the maximum extent feasible.
Any other questions of staff? Mr. Floyd, go ahead.
I think I asked before. So right now they pay nothing to have their, and we're going to charge them, even though they're going to spend more money to buy a new equipment. We're going to charge them to register this equipment.
Isn't it? Now I'm going to have to be able to know where that unit is and when did they replace it. And one of the unique things about this, when you start to work with diesel particulate as a toxic, let's say there's a farm that's near either residential or possibly a school. One of the things our registration is going to do is going to give them a distance to stay away from that residence or that school. So we need to track the location where those engines are.
And you can't do that voluntarily, so they can give you that? And because it sounds like we want them to make this change for all of us, but we're making it expensive for them to make change. Could we voluntarily do it and then penalize the people who just aren't willing to do it and make up the difference, or what?
I think the time it's going to take us, like I said, this fee, this $200, that's the time it's going to take us if they come in and in essence, give us all the information we need right up front.
Okay.
Mike, you might address how many we have so many portable diesel engines out there, pumps, that it's difficult sometimes to find out how many there are.
Yeah, that's another program, and actually we're reimbursed the portable units, which, and another thing we're doing here, I can go into that, but portable units are very difficult to track. Matter of fact, one of our biggest enforcement cases, the folks that built the Santa Clara River Bridge, because they were using illegal portable equipment. But we actually get reimbursement via the state on that program. They pay their fees to the state. We get a portion of that back for our efforts on portable. And then the other thing in our rule is very unique. When this air toxic control measure was developed, they sat down with the agricultural community up in Sacramento, and they came up with a rule, and they said, you're all going to be under the stationary air toxic control measure. Well, when they also changed their portable air toxic control measure, they didn't exempt the agricultural engines there. So suddenly, statewide, the farmers had agreed to come under this air toxic control measure we're going to be implementing. And this ARV staffer let us know, well, we think the portable rule also applies to them. I said, well, that seems a little disingenuous to, to meet with the ag community, tell them this are the rules, and then, oh, by the way, I was wrong, there's this other rule that applies to you. So what we've done in Rule 250 and every other district in the state is, we've basically said that all your ag pump engines are gonna be stationary the way we define them. To put them back in the rule that they negotiated with ARB. And that actually gives them a little bit additional time to comply. And you're right, it is going to be expensive, but our incentive programs are gonna pay about 70% of it.
Okay, it's just, it just, government has a tendency, it's like your home. You can spend all your money, make your home nicer, make it better, and we're gonna tax you more on it because we're doing it right. If I let it run down and do everything else, I tax you less. I mean, there's no incentive for these people to do the right thing, which is, we all want cleaner air and everything else, and it just seems very, I don't know, it bothers me a little bit. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, if I could jump in real quick. Mike, one of the things that we sit up here on this board and we make decisions that obviously affect lots of people in lots of ways, and we've always made an effort to do the outreach. And I know we had a public workshop and we also took it to our advisory board. In terms, do we have members of the ag community as part of that discussion? We
Oh,
try to
absolutely.
engage them, so that's what.
Actually,
So this isn't kind of coming out of a vacuum. We tried to engage. I know basically, hey, you're going to have to pay, but there was some. Here's what we're doing.
oh,
Here's what.
absolutely. Well, with that mail out was well over 1,000. We worked with the Ag Commissioner's office for all the meetings, including this meeting. All the ag community that we know of, working through the Ag Commissioner, were notified of this meeting.
Yeah. And so, and was folks at those meetings?
Yes, they were fairly well attended. We had 15 representatives at our workshop, and then when they looked at how we'd set things up, I think they felt it was a reasonable approach.
Okay. Mr. Chair, are there any public speakers on this?
And if there are no more questions of staff, then at this time we'll open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak on this matter, please come forward and be heard. We have not received any speaker cards, and nobody coming forward. At
Well,
this
Mr.
time,
Chair, if I
without
could,
objection,
then
we'll
I
close
would-
the public hearing.
I'll go ahead and
Speak
move.
on the hearing.
Thank you. I apologize. I'll go ahead and move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Without objection, motion carries. We will move to item 7, approval of an analysis of proposed amendment to Rule 74.30, wood products coatings. Mr. Villegas?
Yes, under the California Cleaner Act, we're required every 3 years to come up with a list of rules that we need to analyze to make sure that we are implementing all feasible measures in Ventura County. And one of those rules is our Rule 7430, wood products coating. And it came to our attention because we looked at the South Coast rule, and they actually had a lower limit for wood product refinishing operations than we did in Ventura County. But as we started to analyze the rule, we also found that they exempt wood coating operations that use less than a gallon per day, and that equates to roughly nearly 2,000 pounds per year of ROC emissions. The exemption threshold in our rule is, as it is in all our coating rules, is 200 pounds per year. So when you step back and you look, our rule is actually more stringent because, especially applied in Ventura County, it reduces substantially more emissions than the South Coast rule would. The other thing is because they've exempted wood finishing operations, and let me just let you know that wood finishing operations are a little more difficult than new product coating and generally requires a higher ROC coating, and that's why we put that in our rule. The other thing is the South Coast rule, since it hasn't gotten down to these smaller refinishing operations that can have quite unique operations, the lower coatings have not been demonstrated to be feasible yet in California, so we're proposing to reject the the amendments that were under consideration in our rule. We will let ARB know that our rule is all feasible measures equivalent to that. So,
Any questions of staff? With that, the items before the board.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. Move to item 8, approval of funding for the Carl Moyer Memorial Air Quality Standards Attainment Program, Year 9.
This is really pretty good.
Chair Sharkey, board members, I'm Chris Frank, Supervising Air Quality Engineer. We're recommending that you approve $1,775,527 in Carl Moyer program funding to help pay for the replacement of 42 engines with new diesel engines that run about 80% cleaner. This will reduce NOx emissions by 23 tons per year, hydrocarbon emissions by 3 tons per year, and particulate matter emissions by 1 ton per year. This is a picture of one of the 10 irrigation pumps to be repowered with a cleaner engine. And
This is where they get the free engines.
I just love pictures of engines.
well,
Ever since I was 2 years old.
okay. 4 tractors like this will be repowered with today's recommendation. I'll
Does
figure
the
this out.
award offer also the meters? Are the meters included on the engines?
The hour meters, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an entire package. 1 propulsion engine and 2 auxiliary engines would be replaced in this commercial fishing boat. This motor grader, it's used in agricultural operations, would get a new engine. Charter sport fishing boat would get 2 propulsion engines and 1 auxiliary engine. This is another commercial fishing boat that would get 1 propulsion engine. This is a dive boat for scuba diving. It would get 4 engines. This is another excursion boat. It would get 2 engines. I'm sorry, 4 engines.
How do you pick these people who get this? Is that just an application they make or something?
They put in an application in, and everyone's in competition for the funds. The most cost-effective projects go forward.
Oh, I see, okay.
The most cost-effective? Oh, okay.
Right.
That's how you.
Not the biggest polluter, but the most cost-effective.
The ones that ask for the fewest amount of money to reduce the largest amount of
Oh,
emissions.
okay, good.
These are celery harvesters. They're actually, it's a platform that moves through the field with conveyor belts on it, and they're self-propelled. So each one of those would get a new engine. There's 4 proposed for today. This is another sport fishing boat, 2 propulsion engines and 1 auxiliary engine. This is a tow rescue boat that get 1 propulsion engine. And these are 2 whale watching boats. Each would get 2 propulsion engines. And there's another picture of one of the Island Packer boats. And this is another one of the agricultural irrigation pumps that we've been talking about. That will make a total of 43 irrigation pumps to be replaced under this year's program so far. Because the oldest funds for the oldest irrigation pump repowers will not be available after the year 2010, we've reserved what's remaining of this year's funds for additional irrigation pumps.
The reason I asked about the meter is we're about the only county in the state that requires, the Groundwater Management Agency requires a water meter on water pumps in order to control the use of water in Ventura County.
Well, the meter that I may have misled you then. The meter that I was talking about is an hour meter that tells how much the engine ran, not how much water it pumped. Now, you could calculate, you could make an estimate of how much water was pumped.
Water pump user, if awarded a new engine, will have to put on that meter.
The hour pump, the hour meter comes with the package that we fund. The water meter, we're not involved in that. Air pollution control is not involved in the measuring of the water pumps.
Provide the meter since it's required.
Actually, I don't think we have the ability under the state guidelines to provide that piece of equipment.
The meter itself, because I have some of that in my place, is maybe after the pump. Once it's pushing the water through, then it's registering the meter, so it won't have to do with the engine. So I think the old ones will probably still work.
If they order.
Could, it could. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's right. I don't want to spend any more money if you don't have to.
So there's enough funds remaining now to repower about 15 additional pumps, and we're accumulating funds at a rate that could repower an additional 10 pumps per month for the next 2 years. We will certify that all replaced engines are destroyed to ensure the emissions are permanently eliminated. We're also requesting your board to approve a minor revision to the standard grant agreement to make it consistent with state guidelines. We'll administer the grant agreements to ensure the project milestones are met before funds are paid, and your approval of today's action would include authorizing the APCO to sign the grants on your behalf and to make minor administrative changes if necessary. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Chair, I have a quick question. To try to put this in the realm of what kind of impact we're making on these replacements, percentage-wise or number of units out there compared to what we're repairing or replacing, what does that look like?
Well, this, over the past 8 years, if we're talking about agricultural irrigation pumps,
Let's just take the pump situation. We're replacing X number of pumps at a certain cost. What percentage of those, the ones that we're replacing, what percentage does that represent in the scheme of things?
of the total. Altogether, this year, 43. Over the past 8 years, we've done 29. We believe there may be as many as 400 in the county.
So we've done 75 out of 400?
Right. And we expect to do many more. As many as 10 a month we'll have funds for the next 2 years.
Supposed to vibrate. Apologize. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? This item requires a 6/10 vote. Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection? We have our 6 votes. Any more?
Thank you.
Please, item carries.
You know, as I mentioned earlier about the fact that Terry Farms was able to switch to a different type of pesticide that wasn't the methyl bromide, and as I understand it was a more expensive one also. And I was just thinking whether Carl Moyer or other kind of grants could assist farmers. If that is the problem, is that one of the problems, is that it costs more to do a one that isn't as toxic, that might be something that we could look into also. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think that'd be a good use of our grant funds.
Yeah, real quick on that one. It's funny, I just met with someone on a concept about that. Right now we're using Clean Air Fund monies, which are probably the monies they're not county monies, but we have a lot of flexibility with them versus Carl Moyer's distinctly diesel engines. And we just received monies from the state for lawnmower buyback, which is where most of the Clean Air Fund, and so I met with that engineer this morning and said, let's cut off using Clean Air Fund, preserve those funds, and we do get interest every year from that endowment, and then we'll start using the state money for the lawnmowers, and my thought was
So there might be some funds there.
exactly for something along reformulation or trying alternatives to methyl bromide.
I've got a question, Mike. Mike, you know, one of the things that they say causes a lot of the pollution in California is our vehicles, of course, and the big trucks. I know we're using but we have people here in this county who have trucking firms. Have we given any out to diesel engines for trucks?
Yes, we have.
I didn't see any here. That's why.
Not this year, but we have.
Okay,
Right now, what we're seeing is egg pumps. They're pretty old, and because the air toxic control measure compliance date is coming, we're getting inundated with applications on egg pumps, and because they're so very cost effective, they're moving to the front of the line right now.
If we get more of this flexibility money in the future, or whatever we get.
Well, I think that once we get through the big over the hump with egg pumps, I think that those Carl Moyer monies will
The
start.
more money
moving.
we can give away, the better off we are.
Yes.
For the diesel trucks in the county, we can start working with them.
That's right, and we have done some trucks.
Mr. Brennan.
And briefly, I think that's one of the things we weigh also. If a trucking company it's how much time they spend in the county and go around, like we do with the boats. Some of the boats transition back and forth, so they're not spending as much time in our air shed, even though everything blows through. So that is one of the factors that gets really put into the equation, is how much time is that engine going to actually be running in our own county. So that's, I think, is another added benefit, other than being located here, but then traveling all across the country and really taking our money from here and really benefiting other air sheds. So I think that's a great piece as we go forward.
And actually, when you look at the heavy-duty trucks, we've done mostly refuse collection because, in essence, a captive fleet, and you're getting diesel particulate right out of a neighborhood. So that's very cost-effective for us.
Wow.
I think in the past we have done Harrison Industry, some fleet conversion, and school buses.
That's right, and GI Rubbish,
Right.
serving
GI
Seymour
Rubbish,
Park,
right.
Thousand Oaks.
Any other comments on this item? If not, we'll move on to item 9, public hearing regarding the adoption of a resolution and amended Schedule A, fiscal year 0708 service rates and fees.
Pursuant to Health and Safety Code, the district is permitted to recover our costs for services rendered that are mandated by the Federal and California Cleaner Act. Similar to previous years, there are 3 types of charges in our service rates and fees. There are service hourly rates, duplication fees, and miscellaneous fees. The service hourly rates reflect the cost of a particular worker classification consisting of salary, benefits, and allocated overhead. Duplication fees are the fees we charge for Public Record Act requests and subpoenaed records. And miscellaneous fees include charges for bad checks and witness fees. For fiscal year 2007-2008, the average increase in hourly service rates is less than 1%. Matter of fact, it's 0.7%. And the reason there's such a small increase is the fact that the allocated overhead dropped, even though other costs went up with the layoff of the 2 senior managers as cost-cutting measures. And there are no changes to either the duplication or the miscellaneous service fees. Therefore, staff is recommending your board adopt the resolution establishing the fiscal year 2007-08 service rates. That's all I have.
Any questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. No speaker cards. Anybody wishing to speak on this item, come forward and be heard. Since seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Items before the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go ahead and move the item.
Second. Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Any objection? Motion carries. We'll move to item 10, approval to transfer funds to Ventura County Transportation Commission for operation of the Dial-A-Ride Route Transit Information Center.
For the past 14 years, Ventura County Transportation Commission has operated a county-wide Dial-A-Route Information Center. It provides transit schedules, routing, and fare information, and it receives over 3,500 calls per month on average. In addition, Dial-A-Route staff are now updating the VCTC website, which is used by over 1,000 people per month to also obtain this information. The district's fiscal year 2007-2008 budget included $25,000 to support Dial-A-Route, again for the current year. Therefore, staff is recommending the transfer of $25,000 to VCTC and authorizing me to sign the attached memorandum of agreement.
Any questions of staff? We have the item before the board. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any objection? The motion carries. We'll move to item 11, the correspondence agenda. Second. Motion to receive and file. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carries. And with no further business, without objection, we're adjourned.